Now, overall grade for the class, it's kind of interesting because my overall grade for the class is a little better than my individual grade for each unit. And the reason I do that is because you have to put them together and then compare them to the rest. And so, like, if they're an A- on offense and a B+ on defense, you'd think, well, then they can't be an A grade, right?
Right.
Well,
Yep.
they can, because some teams may be A on offense and C on defense, or vice versa. Because now you got to stack them as one team. And I will say this again: there are not 5 classes better than this one. There are not. Like, somebody down there gave him a B-. If you think this is a B- grade, that means you think it's a borderline top 15 class. And I'm sorry, you are way off if you think that. Way off. And so what are our grades? Again, let's go back to what our grades are. A, elite college football playoff caliber. B, outstanding to top 15 caliber. C, solid to top 25 caliber. So to me, I think this group is one of the 5 best classes in the country. I think the lowest I'd be willing to go is A-. Because again, I look at some of the classes ranked ahead of them and I say, boy, that offensive class might be better than Notre Dame's, but their defensive class isn't even close. Or that defensive class may be better than Notre Dame's, but their offensive class is not. And that's the thing that makes this class so good, is they're really good on both sides of the ball, and there aren't many teams that can say that they're the same. There just aren't. And I think that's the difference. That's what separates this class, in my opinion, from others.
Yep. I love it. I mean, I wish I could have a little more discourse, man, but discourse is not healthy, right? I agree with you. I mean, I think that people take the negative and run with it too much, right? And we're too hypercritical one way or the other. You know, everything's either fantastic or everything is the worst thing ever, right? So hyperbolic in senses, but I wouldn't trade this class, right? Like this,
Yeah.
I think this class is a tremendous class. The depth is everywhere to be found. There's impact talent at pretty much every spot. You know, we mentioned a couple of the spots that maybe don't have the high impact talent early on, but at least in those instances, if you didn't get the high impact talent, at least they got developmental impact talent, where if they hit, they could be really good football players. So you didn't completely strike out. I think that's my biggest thing, is that there's no position this year, like safety last year, where you struck out, right? Like, you didn't strike out. Could you have hit the ball a little harder? Possibly. Could you hit a little further? Sure. But you didn't strike out anywhere.
Right.
You did a good to excellent job at every single spot, in my opinion.
Like, here's an example. Everybody has LSU's class ranked ahead of Notre Dame's.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, they did a good job this year. Some good things in that class. But here's the deal: they signed 1 linebacker and 0 defensive tackles. Well, those are positions where they had needs beyond those numbers, in my view, right? And you look at last year, I mean, Harold Perkins is probably the best freshman linebacker in college football this year. Would you say that's accurate? I'm only saying probably because I can't tell you that I've watched every freshman linebacker this year.
Yeah,
but of the ones I saw, I think Harold Perkins was the best freshman linebacker in the country this year.
Impact, very good player. Yep.
Yeah. Not that it's a surprise. The guy was a 5-star recruit, right? But they only signed 2 linebackers last year. They only signed 1 this year. It's a problem.
And Perkins is also a little bit of a hybrid kid, where he plays on the ball a little bit too. So it's not even like he's a true
stack. 1 defensive tackle last year, 0 this year. So it's kind of that LSU or Texas A&M thing we talked about. They're ranked higher because they have some guys that get the huge bump in points because of they're the 5 stars, right? And there's some groups like, so for me, LSU is one of the few teams in the country that you can look at and say their receiving core is in the conversation as being better than Notre Dame's.
Yep.
It is, right? Because Shelton Sampson, in my opinion, is better than anybody Notre Dame has as an individual talent. Jalen Brown's a really good football player at receiver. Kyle Parker's a good football player. Kai Prane is a good football player. All right. They got 3 tight ends. Now, to me, none of them are better than Cooper Flanagan, but they got 3 of them. And they needed 3. They met those needs. And so when I look at it, they got 2 running backs that are both highly ranked. Neither of them, to me, are as good as Jeremiah Love. But you look at the rankings, and they're ranked higher than Notre Dame's. Notre Dame not only had better needs, but if you look at the average ranking, Notre Dame had a higher average ranking. Texas has the number 3 class in the country, according to Rivals. Notre Dame is number 7. Notre Dame's average star ranking per player is better than Texas's. Why was Texas considered higher? Because Texas has the 2 5 stars, who get the huge bump in rankings, that the points rankings up. So again, you can look at that way, or you can just look at, did this team meet their needs? And that's the key. That's the important thing. And so that's why I say those things don't matter a whole lot to me. There are not 5 classes in the country, in my view, that are better than this. Now, we're going to find out over the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited about what this group is doing and excited about what this class landed. Yes, could have been even better. Could have been number 2, number 3, maybe number 1.
No
but at the end of the day, this is a really, really good group
100%.
and one that moves the needle for me.
Yes.
And I think the people that are down on it are down on it for 2 reasons. One, you still obsess over recruiting rankings. And number 2, you're still kind of in your feelings a little bit about what it could have been, not what it is.
Exactly.
And that's the reality of it.
Yep.
And the timing too. Like if Notre Dame would have never had Peyton Bowen, Keon Keeley, and Dante Moore in the class, and in the last few days landed Jeremiah Love on signing day, and Kenny Minchie the day on signing day, and Jaden Ausberry on signing day, and Braylon James on signing day, the feeling about this class is so much different because a lot of the reaction to it is an emotional one, not a practical. And we went through that, Ryan. We had an emotional reaction to some of these things.
And all those guys you just named would probably be ranked a lot higher than they are right now.
Bingo.
They were committed to Notre Dame.
Braylon James remained uncommitted or even committed but took 1 million visits.
Yeah.
And then was going to reconfirm whatever he's going to do on signing day and then asking for Notre Dame, he would have been a top 100 player by everybody.
Oh, no doubt.
Facts. If Jaden Ausberry would have remained uncommitted this entire time, took visits to LSU and Michigan and Texas A&M and all the schools that were trying to flip him, he'd be a top 100 player across the board. Right? That's facts. I mean, I showed you the evidence, everybody. I mean, I flat out showed it to you. And so that's what I'm saying is there are not 5 better classes than Notre Dame. I don't care what anybody says. And so, and to do it in the NIL era says even more about what the staff is capable of. And we said this on the show last night with Lucky Lefty. If Sean is right, and over the next year or so, a lot of this NIL stuff from a recruiting standpoint gets taken away, good luck to the rest of the college football world trying to stop Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because if they're doing this while people are just flat out, Oregon just flat out bought a class yesterday.
They did.
Flat out bought a class.
And it's no secret. It's no secret.
They didn't hide it. They're not even hiding it.
No.
Then, if that gets taken away, they're not going to be able to touch Notre Dame. First of all, I wouldn't trade this class for their class anyway.
No.
But the point is, you take that away, and this staff is going to destroy people.